the political Sharia instigated a wave of mass killings in northern Nigeria. I will want to remind all of us that of all those killings, no single successful prosecution was brought by the state against any single person for all those mass killings. So that's why you've seen the killings have sustained. And then you had the crisis in the PDP when President Yar'Adua died, and certain members of the PDP insisted that President Goodluck should not run, but wait so that they can bring somebody amongst them to politically complete the term President Yar'Adua would have had he not died. Nigerians manufactured what they called at that time a doctrine of necessity, which now insisted that in the spirit of the Constitution, that President Goodluck should assume the presidency.
All right, Catch, let me jump in there. We'll come back and hear you out a lot more in a moment, if you can hear me.
And not because of court rulings, but because of the mindset of the political elite to use violence to act.
All right, Catch, I do hope you can hear so that the conversation can go back and forth. All right, we'll come back to you in just a moment, but we'll take a moment now, but we'll be back after the break. Join us again. Welcome back to Nigeria 2015. It's time now for us to get an update on what's happening in the news with Joker Rogers.
Thank you so much, Chamberlain. Here are the news headlines for this hour. Observers from the European Union will not be deployed to the northeastern part of the country to monitor the elections because of the security situation there. This was disclosed by the EU Chief Observer, Mr. Santiago Excella, after a closed-door meeting with the APC presidential candidate and party officials in Abuja. He said a team of 90 EU observers is expected in Nigeria to monitor the elections. On his part, the APC presidential candidate, General Muhammadu Buhari, said that he's confident that the EU will spread its observers adequately across the country to assess the conduct of the elections. Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party's presidential campaign team is in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital, in continuation of its tour of the country to drum up support for the president, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, in next month's elections. Our correspondent in Ilorin says the president arrived in Ilorin, the state capital, and headed for the Metropolitan Square venue of the event. The campaign venue was filled with party members and supporters who gathered to express their solidarity with the party. Well, it might be the end of the road for some governorship candidates, as the election umpire says that they cannot run in the February election. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has rejected the submission of governorship candidates by 7 parties in different states of the Federation. The parties and the states affected are People's Party of Nigeria in Delta State, Labour Party in Niger State, New Nigeria People's Party in Ogun State, Unity Party of Nigeria in Oyo State, United Democratic Party in Rivers State, and People's Democratic Movement in Sokoto and Zamfara states. On the international scene now, a Greek F-16 jet has crashed in central Spain, killing 10 people, including the 2 pilots, and injuring 13. Most of the victims are believed to be Spanish. The Defense Ministry says the jet crashed into other planes after one of the pilots performed a wrong maneuver during takeoff. The planes had been taking part in a NATO exercise called the Tactical Leadership Program. Well, those are the headlines for this hour. Back to you now, Chamberlain.
Well, thank you, Joker. Well, certainly interesting times in our elections here this year. But let me get back to the studio here, and we have Babajide Ogunsowo has since joined us. He's a data and information analyst. Thank you for coming on this evening.
It's a pleasure to be discussing the numbers again tonight.
Yes, indeed. And speaking about numbers, we have spoken about the highlights, the history, what the election has told us in terms of numbers over time. But it was dramatic, sad for a lot of people, especially the year 2011. I mean, the figures we see here, about 10 billion naira worth of property we're told was destroyed at the time. What particularly stuck out for you when you go through the data, the information you see about history and numbers, casualty figures?
I think the first thing is for us to put our voice again to the belief that violence at all levels has to be condemned. There's no justification for whatsoever form of violence. But what's interesting is if we look at where we are in the Fourth Republic, especially if we look at where we started from in 1999, and looking at the acceptability of the candidates, what you will find interesting is in 1999, when President Obasanjo won then, he lost only 3 states in northern Nigeria, Sokoto, Zamfara, and Yobe. Those were the only 3 states he lost in 1999 in northern Nigeria. What you find in 2011 is, though President Jonathan won by a significant margin, he lost 12 states, which is 4 times the number President Obasanjo lost in 1999. So he lost 12 states in northern Nigeria. That is quite significant. It clearly shows some level of weak acceptance in northern Nigeria, and some of those are some of the reasons why we would find a lot of unrest, a lot of violence, which again has to be condemned. And that is what we are saying, that in 2015 we want whoever emerges as the eventual winner shouldn't just win by majority. The person has to be accepted both by northern Nigeria, southern Nigeria, and in general, a large population of the country needs to find that candidate acceptable. With that happening, we will find the incidence of violence significantly reducing.
Let me get Prof in. Prof, do you see that happening in terms of whoever wins and how? Because he highlighted the north-south divide in terms of figures, the result of the elections. What do you see happening this time?
Well, you see, Nigeria has always had a predilection for spread. You remember in 1979, the tussle between Chief Awolowo and Alhaji Shehu Shagari on what constitutes 2/3 of the states of the Federation. And Richard Akinjide's joker, that 2/3 of 19 was 12 2/3 in terms of the spread. Whereas some of us then thought that you had to approximate to the nearest whole number to make it 13, which will have forced the situation into an electoral college. Now, all that is history. But it teaches us that there is a felt necessity, like Babajide said, not only for victory, but for the spread, so that you carry the preponderant majority of the states, the